If you scrolled far enough in your social media apps, I think you will have come across Anthony Bourdain. Now, if the name isn't telling you something, I'll recap quickly. Anthony Bourdain was an American chef, and I think he was also known for being a journalist who was very well known for his way of traveling the world and approaching different cultures and also different cuisines all around the world. So I'm currently, for instance, I'm currently close to finishing World Travel by Anthony Bourdain, in which he personally isn't writing it because at that time when the book was released, he was actually dead. I think he died by suicide. And Anthony Bourdain is coming up now in social media, I think for a few underlying reasons. And this is why I wanted to make the video. All roads lead back to Anthony Bourdain, specifically in terms of how my generation is maybe viewing being restless and how we view also this world openness in a world where, specifically certain generations are turning against a world full of different ethnicities and cultures, right? And so I want to start off, I think, by referencing a well-known quote by him. It goes something like this. So he is saying that if he's an advocate for anything, if he stands for anything in his life, then it is to move as far as you can and as much as you can. Doesn't matter if you're only crossing a river or an ocean, just get up and move. So in principle, he's promoting a very nomadic lifestyle. And if you know something about anthropology, you will know that for most of our lives, like we as Homo sapiens, we have been nomadic. That is until we sat down and started doing agriculture. But before that, we were hunters and gatherers. We were always moving. We did not have a state. States and ethnicities and identities in which they are based off a state, they are synthetic. They don't really exist. And he is living that idea, right? But obviously he is someone from a very privileged country, so he has the American passport. Obviously he can go wherever he wants, right? Someone, for instance, who have a Syrian passport can't go anywhere. Like, that's just the truth behind it, right? But he's embodying that nomadic lifestyle. And again, if you had a look at social media, you will also have seen that a lot of people, for instance, are working remotely because of that. So what they want is essentially the ultimate flexibility of choosing a country and staying there, for instance, for tax reasons, because they have family there, because they've met their partner there, and they want to retain this flexibility of moving around. This is what we call a digital nomad. Are they like Anthony Bourdain? I will say this, I don't think so, because these digital nomads, they are very much like expats. If you have met some expats, you will know that they like to create their own bubbles. They will never really accustomed to any given culture. And I have just seen that for myself. So I have lived in Qatar for a year. I will say that a lot of expats do not speak the regional language. Anyways, coming back to Anthony Bourdain. So we have him as a nomad. We have him also as someone who's embracing different worldviews that cannot be taught until you are in these countries. So if you look at Western media, like they are portraying you a different world, right? Like they give you a certain framework on how to view the world. Every media is doing that. And every media is also dehumanizing people, right? By putting labels on them. Labels are inherently not bad, but what they tend to do is to bring you down to one single factor. It has worked, for instance, very well for Middle Easterners, right? Because when I say Middle Easterners, I'm breaking down essentially 10 different Arabic countries and 10 different dialects and different ethnic groups into one label. That makes it very easy for you to categorize people. And it also promotes the usage of this language because there is enough research that shows that the language you speak is not only your limit to reality, I will mention in brackets Wittgenstein here, and secondly is also a gateway to your actions. So the moment you start dehumanizing people, you will have to assume that at one given point, people will start to use violence because your brain is following language. That's what it's doing. And Anthony Bourdain broke labels. He went into different countries like Lebanon, like Oman, like Iran. He went there, he saw that people are very much like us. Because if you look at the media, Westerners are never really put into a label, right? If you talk about Europe, it's never Europeans in a negatively connotated label. Like that doesn't happen. And so Anthony Bourdain is not only breaking these labels, but he's also making sure that we see what he's seeing. And he is very open in how he shares his thoughts, because he's having entire monologues sometimes. And I think at the last point, he was someone very optimistic, despite him ending his life in a suicide, which will also come to this, is I think rooted in him not finding a place to call home. But he was optimistic in the sense that we can get along, that we can sit together and have a meal. Because human connection sometimes starts with simple meals. Sitting together, explaining each other what we feel, even in broken languages, even in languages that you don't speak. Talking and seeing that they are very much like you, that the different labels that the world has assigned to them, it's not true. And I think that is why a lot of Gen Z people, they look up to Anthony Bourdain. Because I will also reference a very specific case here. When Kanye produced his album with his title song of, I think it was called All the Love, in which he sampled Fairuz, a Lebanese singer, I will say that I felt kind of, I guess represented in a way, because he was overlapping different cultures. And he was taking a song that from the lyrics made a lot of sense to include in a song titled All the Love. And he broke labels, because I doubt that someone who is not listening to songs in their non-native language actually knows people like Fairuz, who's primarily singing about the Arab diaspora, by the way. So that is my case study for recognizing that we are essentially very similar, regardless of the labels that we have. And this is where I want to come back, I think, to talk first about maybe why Anthony Bourdain ended his life, and then talking on the issues that are essentially regarded as issues from my side for Gen Z. Like, I'm trying to think about the issues that Gen Z is facing in the face of how I would portray them. But obviously I cannot generalize, right? So I think one of the issues that are very much overlooked in Anthony Bourdain's life is that he felt restless in the way that he never found hope. So he does talk about that. Like, there are different quotations in which he's saying that I'm on travel 250 days a year and he's mostly alone. Like, he has no one. I think even his crew, they remained close friends, but close friends cannot really take a place in which your family is supposed to be. Because at that time, I think he had a daughter. And so, I think 2 of his marriages broke apart because of his lifestyle, and he still chose that. So I think the internal battle between being a very curious human and facing loneliness on the other side, that's a dilemma that you will have to face if you want to live like Anthony Bourdain, right? Because it's uncomfortable, right? Even if you don't travel as much as him, it's still uncomfortable. For instance, overcoming labels, very uncomfortable, because you have been trained to view the world in categories. That's very beneficial for other people. And so, battling loneliness is, I think, very hard, specifically if you're traveling. And I don't want to say he ran away from his issues, but he might have done that. And maybe he tried to drown himself in in knowledge and in history and in the foods that he was consuming. Maybe he did that, but that's just speculation from my side. Now, we're doing a cut, and I'll start yapping about why I think Gen Z in general is looking up to him, and why, for instance, that is very much connected to why Gen Z wants to leave the country. Or it depends again on the state, but I can speak for Germany. A lot of people want to leave the country. Anyways, so we'll start. I think Gen Z is very much restless in the sense that they know that the system of hard work is not coming back in the benefits they expect. That is also largely due to the fact that we have a sinking birth rate. Actually, it is directly correlated to that. And we just don't have a lot of people, paying enough taxes for the state. By the way, that is the only reason why a state would really care about the sinking birth rate, because there are not enough taxes. That's the only thing. And you realize at some point that, it doesn't make a lot of sense to stay in a country where you are seen as a commodity to just pay taxes, and pay taxes more with, high living costs and a very stagnant salary. So Gen Z is facing the following dilemma. Do I stay and I can predict what will happen? Or do I just leave and see what other countries would fit me? And changing countries alone by the way, is always a move that, is accompanied by fear. And when you look at people like Anthony Bourdain who tell you move because I did that and it was actually exceptional, it was a great feeling, I learned so much, then you are very much inclined to do that. So because people are more or less inclined to leave, they need a catalyst to leave. Now, case study here is actually Germany. Like, I know for a fact that the young people between 19 and 24 years, they to leave the country, and the percentage of wanting to leave the country of that group is at 21%. Like 21% of people not only want to leave, but they have specific plans. And where do they want to leave? Mainly Switzerland, right? High salaries, rather low taxes, and living cost is high, but your salary is kind of equating that. I think Austria is the second most liked destination because, again, quality of life is better. I'm not quite sure about the taxes, but apparently quality of life is good. Again, German, right? Spain is a very famous destination for Germans, and Italy, somewhere around that. So people want to leave, and they need a role model to leave. So I think that is why Anthony Bourdain is very much connected as a central figure. Next thing is probably the cultural aspect. So Anthony Bourdain is someone who represents what we have all been promised, namely someone who is a global citizen. I think if I look back at my own school years, I do tend to think that there was a very optimistic outlook on our future, right? Even despite the climate change, I felt like a lot of people were very confident in having a good and flexible future in which they can go and travel and meet a lot of people. Now that is being shattered by right-wing parties who again use labels to dehumanize people. And the Gen Zers who essentially follow Anthony Bourdain, they not only want to see the world as a tourist, so someone who's very much uneducated and doesn't really engage in a local language, but they want to immerse themselves in languages, in environments, because that is where you grow as a person, right? You learn new things and you start seeing the world differently. I think I need to reference Wittgenstein here. Wittgenstein famously said that my language is my limit to reality. And what he's essentially referencing is the way we speak a language, or the kind of language that we speak, determines how we view reality. So for instance, someone who speaks Mandarin sees the world in a much more accurate way than someone who might speak a Romance language. That is very much attributed to the fact that the Chinese language just has much more expressions, right? Like, you are talking about 80,000 characters. Romance languages have around 500,000 words. Like, the 80,000 characters can also be combined into words. Or, Farsi, apparently 200 million words. Arabic, 12 million words. So people speaking these very complex languages, they tend to have a much more accurate view of what they see. And it also looks different when you look at these brains. So that is a very interesting field, by the way. And yeah, that was a case study for the second point. The last point I want to reference is we had optimism, right? It's very easy to fall into pessimism, right? Because I even feel like a lot of the things that I do, they are pointless, right? Because it doesn't matter at the end. I'm not getting something out of it. There is no financial gain. There's nothing that puts me up for something, right? And at the end, you will have to realize that the only thing that does change your own situation for the better is radical optimism. Because you can be a pessimist, but nothing changes. You can be a radical optimist like Anthony Bourdain was, up to a certain point, and change your life like you want to do it. And I think, honestly, that's the only way for my generation to go. You can be stuck in pessimism, but nothing will change. You will not change. You will be at the very same spot the next 6 months that are coming. And Anthony Bourdain, because he has been everywhere and because he kind of also made you regain trust in humanity, makes it easy to believe that, yes, there is something worth about trying, something worth about being a radical optimist, even when you can't really see the benefits of it now. And that's it for the video. If you have comments about what I just said or things that you want to have clarified, feel free to comment. Otherwise, that's it for today's video, and I hope you enjoyed it. That's it. Bye.